Uh, Hello, I'm Brian Freiberger, editor for the Illinois Enterprise. Thank you for checking us out today. Today, my guest is Wayne Stiles of Elmwood Township, who is running for Michigan's 1st congressional district as a Democrat. Stiles is squaring off against candidates Kyle Bloomquist and Kylie Barr. The primary will occur on August 4th. The general election will occur on November 3rd. I plan on interviewing all candidates for all parties, so please follow along to these episodes. And make sure to like and subscribe and find us on social media at leelanawnews.com. Awesome, Wayne. Hey, we're here again. Thank you for coming out, and we're really heating up here last few weeks of the race.
That's right.
I mean,
just first crazy of all, out there right now.
Yeah, it's getting crazy. Just first, give me an introduction, who you are, why you're running for Congress.
Sure. Wayne Stiles. I'm a Democrat for Michigan's 1st congressional district, and my entire career I spent as an industrial designer. I specialized in new product development, and I created a career out of, designing elegant solutions to complex problems. And what I see happening here now in Washington is that we have a lot of problems. So after the last election, I said, if I need to stop complaining, I have to get out there and actually do something if I want to see the kind of change and the kind of representation that I want. So for better or for worse, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and you live out in Elmwood Township, right outside Traverse City, right? Yeah. Heck yeah. I mean, how has been the traveling the biggest congressional district this side of the Mississippi?
It's extensive, and I've been from everywhere from, Elmwood all the way over, or, Ironwood all the way over in the top, Houghton, Marquette, Escanaba, the Sioux, all the way down on the southeast side of the state, Tawas. I'm going to Alpena this afternoon. So it's a lot of traveling. I do a lot of books on tape.
Yeah, of course. Heck yeah. And I'm sure a lot of books, a lot of miles. How many miles you ramped up on your car?
Well, I switched vehicles, last October, and I have 40,000 put on that already. And I know other candidates have put a few more out there, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so, no doubt. That's amazing. And, just first of all, what makes you different from Barr and Bloomquist?
I can say that people keep trying to put my campaign inside of a box. They just want to check it off, like, are you moderate? Are you progressive? Are you liberal? Are you conservative? And as a designer, I don't put myself in boxes. I created them, so I think I'm a different kind of Democrat in that sense. My heart sings for many of the progressive issues that are out there and what people are really, desiring to have, like with universal health care and, our education and housing and, many of the top issues that every candidate will talk about. What I try to offer, besides just my outrage, is that we have a plan for everything. And that comes from my industrial design background, where you first look at the problem, you then come up with solutions, you then execute those solutions, and then you test them. And then if they're not working the way that you want, you go back and recorrect the ship and you move forward. And then you move on to the next problem. I don't imagine myself as a congressman that is there just for a job. I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking to get a guardrail back up on this democracy, and flip this congressional seat blue. We have the current congressman, Jack Bergman. He's been in office for over a decade, clearly not representing the people of our district, and I wanted to see change. So we have one candidate who is, happily endorsed by the Socialist Party. We have another candidate that is, wearing the mantle of the Democratic establishment, and they may feel comfortable inside those boxes, but I do not. And the main reason is that it's going to take 186,000 votes to win this district back from Jack Bergman. And that means it's going to take nearly every Democrat, a supermajority of independents, and a quarter of Republicans that are ready for change. And unless we're offering solutions that can bring all those people into the fold, we're going to let Jack Bergman win again. And I do not want to see that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure the environment's changed, just since 2 years. I know, obviously, this is your first time running, right?
It is, yes.
From Barr faced him last year, lost pretty handily herself. I mean, in 24. Right. have you seen that, with independents and those, those on the fence Republicans and Democrats? Have you been seeing them willing to open their mind a little bit during this cycle, or
Yeah. I
what's your
mean,
perspective on it?
I went to all 11 indivisible candidate forums in the district over, since, the middle of the winter time to early the spring. And we had candidates from all sides, and you meet a lot of the different people that are supporting their candidates. And what I found is that everybody in Michigan is really suffering. So my campaign is not about left versus right. It's about the working class versus the billionaire class. And that encompasses everybody here. I'm an entrepreneur. I know how hard it is to make a payroll and to pay bills. And I also know that, everybody in our district wants good paying jobs, right? So I've worked alongside skilled trades, and I've worked alongside business owners and owning my own small business myself. I know we're all like one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. We're all, struggling when the United States is one of the richest countries in the world, right? And our workforce has never been more productive in its history. And yet the American dream is slipping further and further away from the working class people. And it's time that all parties, but specifically the Democratic Party, we focus on winning back the working voter, that we win back, the rural communities, and then we earn trust by actually solving problems when we get to Congress. You had said something about, just the way that we lost.
No,
in 2024,
yeah,
and for me, that was one of the main reasons that I entered this race. I looked at our state, and I looked at what was happening in our voting district, and I believe Cali got about 37% of the vote, and compared to the state and compared to what other state and local house reps were doing, we really got beat hard. And I thought we have to do something better. So I don't know if that's the threshold of how many people she can get to vote for her. I don't know what it is, but I know that I had enough, and I couldn't, sit back and, and watch this continue. So I had to do something.
Heck yeah, no, that's it. No, we just appreciate you coming here and giving it a fight, and we'll give it fair chance for all candidates and all that sort of thing. We just like people getting in there and being more.
Yeah.
I don't want
to. I don't want to disparage. I don't want to say anything.
It's a shame we don't have more
about
debates
any of the other candidates.
Like
Everybody that's out there running right now is running because they want to do better for the people around them, for their families, for their communities. And so I don't want to take anything away from that candidate. I'm just telling you why I'm running.
Yeah, of course. And no, that's it. You're a local guy, man. So you're on one. So heck yeah, that's amazing. As long as they're, hopefully they're from the, they live in the county for a decent amount of time
in the district.
You don't necessarily got to be from it. Like I'm not from here, so I can't hold that. But I love this place. But you got to be here for a little bit, not like some other Republicans and stuff like that. But
right, we have some issues.
For
some reason, and I think it might be a little bit tied to like almost everything in Michigan. We have a wealth of natural resources. We have, all this shoreline, all this fresh water, but Michigan is not notoriously wealthy. So you have all these outside influences coming in, and they look at the state, when it comes to like water pumping the central of our state. Hershey came in and they lowered the water table so far that every single resident in the area, their wells went dry, and they're asking for more and more water. We have, fishing, forestry. Now data centers are coming in, and it's like they look at Michigan and they're like, we're going to go in there and take those natural resources. They suck the wealth out, and then they leave once they've done everything that they can do. And that's what I think at a federal level that we can do is have protections for our district and for our state that, support our local communities. We're a rural district for the most part, and when these big companies come in, the same thing's happening with housing. So, you can go on and on and on. And I spoke to this a little bit earlier, but, money in politics is like the root of everything that's dysfunctional in Washington right now. So everything you want to talk about healthcare, you want to talk about, the economy, you want to talk about housing, you want to talk about our natural resources, there's always somebody that is trying to create a revenue stream out of, what's happening here. And they're most of the time they're not supported by the people in this district. They're supported by outside influences, and they see Michigan as an easy target. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm here to stop.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess just to kind of go into that a little bit further. I mean, just give us your stance on data centers. And I mean, in terms of at the congressional level, like what one of the 435, what could be done? I mean, to deal
Well,
with
there's,
these.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot that can be done. We clearly are behind on understanding exactly what's happening with these data centers. A few years ago, they were much smaller. The size of them is exponentially increased. There's like a race to the top on who can create the most, AI power out there. But eventually, we're going to overshoot that during that race. And some communities may want these data centers. Me personally, I don't think we need them here in Michigan. But if we're going to have them, if the communities decide that they want them, then we got to make sure at the federal level that we're supporting those communities so they can defend themselves. Because this, going in and just talking to, the local utilities or people that are on the local boards, and like, I want to make sure there's transparency, and that when these corporations come in, I mean, to do this and build these AI data centers, one of the things that we could clearly do to help the people in Michigan and across this country is that make them come with their own like decommissioning bonds. If they want to come in and build a data center, then make sure they got a bond that when they overshoot and then they decide to close the place, that they put that facility back in that land back into its original use. Make sure that we have transparency in how much water are they using. Make sure that's a closed loop system. I mean, really what we need to do is, instead of maybe investing in that way, is invest in the renewable resources to create that power. We've had the last few years, we've had some incredibly damaging weather systems with ice and whatnot in our district, and our power grid keeps going down. And yet in our state, DTE is asking for more and more. And we're proposing that we're putting these data centers in that take a massive amount of energy to run. Like, what are we doing here? We can't even keep our grid up for the people here, and yet we're willing to immediately, give tax incentives and tax breaks for these data centers to come in. I mean, I know people are calling for moratoriums on it, and I'm basically there. Like, we need to step back, figure out what's going on, and then, make sure that we're using sound, transparent, advice from professionals, and then decide where we're going to go in the future with these things. Because right now we're on our back foot.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's ever interesting world. Living with that, and just seeing if it comes to fruition, or what's going to happen with that over the next few years is going to be absolutely fascinating.
Right.
So, and these massive data centers, I in terms of like size and scale, you think your compute naturally gets smaller,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I mean,
No, I mean,
yeah,
they're multiple football fields
Yeah.
long. They take forever to
I'm
drive
right down
around.
the road from that Celine
Yeah.
one. That
Okay.
is big controversy downstate and stuff like that. It's a big issue, in voting and stuff like that in a local community. But I guess just moving on. Obviously, paying in the grocery store, paying at the pump. This summer. Obviously because overseas conflicts and that sort of thing. Where do you sit on the Iran situation and how this, and should Congress be voting for these foreign conflicts that we're getting with, especially in the last 60, 70 years, the Congress hasn't necessarily voted for one
Right.
act of war.
Right. And if I had every piece of data in my mind on that, I'd be happy to explain it. But I mean, look at what's happened since, if Congress is supposed to declare war, which clearly they haven't, and the presidents along the lines have said, like, well, we have they basically said that you have a certain number of days that, and then you have to, seek Congress's approval. And now in this administration, we're watching where they're like, oh, we'll just change the, like, oh, that ended. Now it's something new. So there's always like a shell game going on. So we never have to follow the rules that we've set up. We're always working outside the rules in the gray areas. And, that's one of my biggest pet peeves of this current administration is that they're always working outside the guidelines of the Constitution to get whatever they want, whether it's by executive order, or just flat out not following rules. And like, I never realized how fragile our democratic republic was until we watched one person decide they're not going to follow any of the rules. And that's where I realized, like, okay, everybody needs to stand up and we need to put an end to this. So with Iran, clearly we have issues. Like, that started out like it was going to be a quick grab. That's what I believe the president thought. And it clearly has not happened that way. He doesn't think before he acts, which is a huge problem for me, especially with a design background. Like, I'm always thinking about the next step and what's out there and what's the nth degree of a decision that I make. Like, if you're going to say something, how does it actually play out further and further along? And, clearly that's not happening at this point. And, our military budget doesn't need to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we keep spreading out around the world. Before, they told us, like when I was in school, that we're expanding democracy. That sounded great. But when you actually watch what's happening, that's not what's happening. We've set up many of these countries, we did the work. And then now we're bombing them, but we can't have healthcare. We can't have, school lunches. We have a homelessness problem. We have people in our district that are making $63,000 on, that's the family household income in Michigan's first congressional district. And that means you can afford about a $175,000 house. But if you want new construction now on a modest 1,000 square foot house is like $275,000 to $350,000. There's $100,000 disparity between what people in our district can afford and what's being offered out there. And I'm circling around over and over, but I mean, it's all has to do with money and the fact that since the 80s, they told us trickle down economics was going to be great. And it clearly is not. We watched the richest people in the world build rocket ships and launch themselves into space instead of reinvesting into their people and their communities. So, I mean, you follow that all the way around, and it's just like we need to do something different. We've watched this huge accumulation of wealth go to the top, and clearly they're not investing back into their business, into their people, into their communities, into any of the things that would actually help bolster the working class. So when we talk about how we're going to balance our budget, where we're at $39 trillion in debt right now, we need to get to a point where we reduce that debt and we balance our budget, and we have to do that with rearranging our tax system. And clearly, based on evidence that everybody can see, we need to start taxing these billionaire corporations on their wealth and get back to a system where either they're going to get taxed, or they're going to reinvest into their businesses, or they're going to reinvest into pensions, or they're going to reinvest in their people, or reinvest in their communities. Otherwise, we'll do it for them. Clearly it's got the pendulum swung so far that we've created this oligarchy system, and there's too few people that are controlling too much of the wealth in this country, and everybody else is shouldering that burden right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. And there's rhyme or reason in just about everything, I'm sure as you can find as a designer yourself. I mean, in May, Congress approves FISA, support renewing surveillance powers on American citizens without warrant requirement. Bergman just voted to reauthorize. Obviously, it's still moving through the Senate and stuff like that. But what was your stance on that?
So after 9/11, we said we need to do more to protect ourselves. And some people took that as an opportunity to say, let's start doing massive surveillance on, the American citizens to extract every piece of information that we can from them. I mean, we watched with Doge that, they were supposed to be giving us, looking for ways to find waste and abuse. They were the waste and abuse, I mean, so I don't know what to say about Jack Bergman. He clearly votes against, the wishes of the people in our district. He's a veteran, yet somehow votes against, things that will help veterans. He wants to privatize the VA when it's finally getting back up on its feet and offering better services. You know, when you look at all the candidates that are running right now, and if you actually dialed down and said, like, how much grassroots money from people in this district that are donating to the candidates, we're all pretty similar. But then you have our congressman who's, taken, well over $250,000 from a family in California who, the president has given a pardon for, for their convictions and corruption, donating all the way back to Michigan to our congressman. He has no reason to listen to anybody here. We know he hasn't held a town hall, since 2017. We know he doesn't live here. His family's in Louisiana, his wife's there, his church is there. He works in Washington. Michigan's just a third wheel for him. And since his campaign is not being funded by people from our district, he's not, beholden to us at all. He's beholden to his donors. And they're in the list, go right on the FEC and look at his donor list. It's massive by these corporations that are paying for his favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's interesting. And your campaign's been mostly grassroots funded, correct? I mean, explain to me how you've been able to fundraise it.
You do a lot of it yourself. That's what that's what I've learned over the last, well, I've been running since a year ago, February. So, you do a lot of work yourself. I was joking with you earlier, but like, I know how to write HTML code for, if I want to send out an email, I write my own emails. I do a lot of policy issues. So if anybody is interested in hearing about my policies and not just, sound bites, I write 2 or 3 emails a week and talk about specific policies and what my plan is to make sure that we have actions like that. So that's something, if you're interested, yeah. I do a lot of that. So, yeah, it's tough. You do a lot of it yourself. There's, core volunteers that really help you out a lot. But, you can only spend so much money on a campaign. But I think part of the issue is no matter how much money Jack Bergman brings in and how much he spends, like he's going to outspend everybody. He's got the last quarter I looked at, I think he had like $1.8 million in his personal, and then he's got his Bergman Victory Fund PAC that all that money can easily get, moved to him, or any other PACs can shell money to him, to spend for his campaign. But I kind of feel like he's the last member wearing his members only jacket with, in regards to his MAGA position. People are upset. I mean, I see it even like when I go to these events and I talk to the Republicans that are there, they're like fed up. They're like, come on, like you have to start doing something for us. People have been, lied to for so long, and they wanted to believe all these things that it was going to be better, and it's not. And now everybody's waking up. So if we're going to flip this congressional district, it's going to be in this midterm election right now. Every time I get down on my campaign a little bit, I'm like, okay, what's going on? And then the president opens his mouth the next day, and then it fires me back up like, yeah, that's exactly why I'm running, because we got to do something different here. Yes. And Jack Bergman is clearly, right in with that MAGA group. He caters for the attention of the president in an almost bizarrely weird way that I don't understand, and I don't know why he is not representing our district in a better way.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Let me just make sure we're still going here. We're still going strong. All right, cool. A few more questions here. Just moving on here to, I was talking with Donato the other day, and he mentioned something interesting about signing a term limits pledge. And would you be interested in something like that? And with ethics and ethics rules and bans on trading and betting markets being more and more talked about, what's your stance on it? For members of Congress?
Right, for members of Congress, and not even just that. So, like, I think we have an issue with the U.S. House of Representatives being elected every 2 years. From my perspective, I think that really needs to be 3 years, because you are always campaigning. You barely get elected and you're already back in campaign mode. So there's this incredible amount of effort that needs to be put into spending money to get reelected. I think if there was one more year there, then you could actually focus on, being a legislator
Yeah, yeah,
instead of being a campaigner.
yeah.
And, is 3 terms enough? I think so. Like if you didn't do what you thought you were going to do in 3 terms, then you're there for another reason. I mean, when our founding fathers set up our government, they expected people to come from their communities, represent the people, help write legislation, and then go back into their communities. They didn't expect them to come in and camp out for a career. I mean, we see what's happening. I don't know. Is Mitch McConnell alive today? I don't even know.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
right? I don't
yeah,
know.
no,
Like,
yeah.
and investigative journalism, like, well, how come nobody can find this out? Like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. We have people that are clearly well past their expiration date, mentally, to be representing the people in their districts, and they don't leave because there's so much money, there's so much power there, that they never want to leave. So I mean, we need to, like, if they're not going to leave on their own and turn the reins over, like, let's get some younger people in there, and some people that are more closely represent. I mean, it's supposed to be the U.S. House of Representatives. Are we actually putting the candidates in there that are actually representing the people from their district? I don't think we are. And so if we have term limits, that's one way to do it. I think that we need to, have some, limits on how old you can be to run in Congress. Like, there's many other fields out there that they realize your mental acuity, once it starts slipping, and now that you see what's happening is that we're hiding that too, you know, for political reasons. There's stuff that needs to happen there. We have the Supreme Court. When I grew up and when I was in school, we were like, oh, the Supreme Court, they're there for a lifetime, you know, position, so they won't be corrupt. They won't be, and now we're watching in like real time, like they're clearly getting tons and tons, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're not reporting it correctly. There's corruption there. So I'm ready to say, okay, we need time limits for our Supreme Court. Maybe we need to expand that court. But if you want to expand it, great. But let's not just expand it for more corruption. Let's start fixing some of these problems. And insider trading, huge problem. Owning stocks, being on subcommittees and committees, committee chairs, and you see that what's happening in the background, and then suddenly your stock portfolio, you know, people are getting rich in Congress. I would go to prison for that if I was doing that. There's federal laws against that,
Yeah.
and they're like clearly outside that system. They have their own healthcare system. We want to work on healthcare. How about we just get rid of the, House and Senate's healthcare plan and tell them you're going on the same plan we're on, and then stuff would actually start getting done. I mean, so there's a lot of different things that we can be doing, and like I said earlier, money and politics is clearly the root of everything that's dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even the campaign staffers of some,
Right.
our congressmen are
Right.
getting pretty rich off some things too as
Right.
well.
And
as
it's
with
not
that.
just
Yeah.
that, we're in a capitalistic
Yeah.
country. I get it. Like people are allowed to make money,
Mhm.
right? But when there's a threshold set that says you have to start reporting your gains at a certain level, and then you make your paycheck just slightly under that, and then you take bonuses that don't count towards it, that's just cheating the system. That's the part where we have to fix that kind of stuff. I'm just asking for fair treatment for everybody. And apparently that's too radical and too progressive, for people on the right to swallow.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't understand it. It's like
Yeah.
what a lot of people call progressive issues in my mind are just like common sense issues now.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting, and find we agree a lot more than we disagree when you really kind of get down to brass tacks there. When you're talking with just about anyone, at least from what I found when talking to everybody like we do over here. I mean, so I guess just if there's a couple other topics you want to talk about with that you think you go into Congress that you would really want to focus on, what would that be?
Healthcare is the number one thing. And we could do a whole probably hour segment talking about healthcare and all the different things that we could do with that. I mean, clearly the system is broken. Do we need Medicare for all or single payer or whatever terminology we want to put on it and people want to like point at those labels and go crazy over? Yes, we need to do something. In my opinion, I think that's a long-term plan. I'll challenge any of the people that I'm running against that say like we need to burn the system down, raise it to the ground. There's 40% of the people that work in our district are in healthcare. So if you raise it on Monday, how are they going to get paid on Friday? That's my first question for them. So instead of just these knee-jerk reactions like we got to burn it down to the ground, why? And if we are going to do that, what is your plan to do that? I often hear people say there's 35 industrialized countries that have universal health care. That's great. Not one single one of those 35 countries raised the old system to the ground and then said, here's a brand new system starting tomorrow. If we want universal health care, what system are we talking about out of those 35 countries? Are we talking about Australia, Germany's, the Netherlands? Like what plan do we want? So if when I talk about healthcare, yes, I want universal healthcare, but here's a stopgap that we could do right now. Get that public option put back in place that was originally supposed to be in the Affordable Health Care Act originally, which was the federal government offering its own insurance program for people to buy into. So then it would create competition with the other insurance companies out there. And you see clearly that in the state of Michigan, there's like three main healthcare, companies that we have to choose from. Those guys can sit in a room together and have coffee and set the rates. You want to do something that is not burning down the healthcare system and could happen tomorrow. Here's something that would directly affect Michigan's first congressional district. Vote in Congress to say you can sell insurance over state lines. That would immediately cause insurance companies to be more competitive without the federal government even stepping in at all. And what that would allow is like our district, if you're in the Upper Peninsula, your nearest specialized healthcare is an hour south, not 4.5 hours across the Upper Peninsula in the middle of winter. Maybe the Mackinac Bridge is open, or maybe it's not due to falling ice. And then all the way down, if you need real specialized care like Ann Arbor or something like that, like that's something that could happen literally tomorrow that would give us instantaneous relief for the people in our district and probably other areas around the United States. If you want to, what I would suggest is with that healthcare system and the public option, that we call it public option plus. And the plus would be like in our area here, we have Munson Healthcare System. They've already bought up a lot of the smaller, independent hospitals and healthcare facilities, and then they consolidated them, and then they reduced services, and consolidated them at their bigger hospitals. We already have, there's talk of closing the labor and delivery in Gaylord. So now you have to go to Traverse City or Grayling or Petoskey. We're going to be having babies on the side of the road next winter. That's not helping the people. So without even the federal government stepping in, you already have healthcare as a business consolidating and leaving abandoned pockets of rural Michigan without any healthcare at all. So the plus for me would be have the federal government then go in and offer, tuition, reduced tuition rates or help with student loans to get doctors to come into these, to make a commitment to these smaller towns. With the federal government opening some of these facilities in these areas that are basically been abandoned, then people will have direct access to their funds. Then they're not tied to their jobs either. So if they decide they want to move, they still have health care. Portability would be huge for us in stabilizing our communities. So the federal government comes in, they open up a facility, you then use those federal dollars to help, get new doctors coming into the area. Then they open up one of these abandoned buildings that are downtown that are littered across our district. And then they, they'll build, let them build the office spaces above or put housing in there. You're going to need then skilled labor to come in. Then once the skilled labor comes in, they're bringing their younger families, the schools increase. We can then help teachers with their student loan debt for young teachers to come in, and you start using the federal buying power and federal dollars to not only help the healthcare system, but jumpstart revitalizing our rural communities. So I think that's a plan that could happen. It, some of it doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that's immediate and it's a real solution. We often hear from the Republican side, like the Democrats never have a plan. I have a plan. I have a plan for every single one of my topics. Anything that's concerning for our district, I try to have a plan behind it. I'm not just going to give you punchline, like words that you want to hear. I'm gonna come with a plan, and I think that's what makes me a different kind of Democrat.
I don't know if this would be an issue, maybe you've written about, but the whole property tax debate in Michigan and across the nation.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously a lot of our Republican governors are running on dismantling the property tax.
Right.
And so that comes into question.
And their plan was to replace it with?
Exactly. So, I mean, I was just
what are they replacing it with?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I haven't heard anybody say what they're replacing it with. And that sounds great. I was just talking to a person last week and they're like, oh, I have, some property. It's valuable. I don't, I pay a lot of taxes on it. I'm in a remote area, so I don't get a lot of the services. Like, why am I paying so much in taxes? Like, I don't want to do that. And my answer to that is, that's great if you individually don't want to pay any taxes. Guess what? I don't want to pay taxes either. But you know what I do want? I want social safety nets. I want to make sure we have a great education system. I want to make sure our roads and bridges and infrastructure are, adequate for us. Like, that takes money. That takes federal buying power is the best way to do that. So yeah, nobody wants to pay taxes, but everybody wants services. So I'm not a big fan of watching somebody get on stage and say, we're going to eliminate anything that, that is an inconvenience to us, and then have zero plan to fix it or to replace it. It's just going to be somebody else's fault and somebody else's responsibility further down the line. That sounds great. I would love to be able to just easily step back and say, oh, I'm for every progressive issue, because that's easy. I'm for every mega issue. That's easy. The real work starts in the middle, where you have to actually start coming up with solutions and actually solving problems. And, I know we're in a primary. I have to get through the primary to get to Jack Bergman, to get him out of there and get the guardrail back up on our democracy. But I'm not going to get pulled either to the left or to the right. I'm going to look at individual issues, and I'm going to make sure that we got solutions for them that work for everybody.
Yeah. And I guess just to kind of, wrap up here, Wayne, I mean, Leelanau is one of the best voter bases, per capita in the district. What's your closing pitch and why you should be the nominee?
I'm going to be a hard worker. I've spent my career, broken systems. That's what I've spent my career doing, fixing. So often people will say, like, Wayne, it's going to take years to undo the damage this current administration has created. And my answer to them is, great. That's exactly what I spent a career doing. Like, I solve problems. I fix problems. I will take that challenge on, and I'm going to do it. And, I don't know what the other candidates are out there to do, but I'm here to fix problems.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Wayne.
Yeah,
we appreciate you